Don't engage alone. We do this together.
Yeah!
We got it! We got it!
52 booklets.
Somebody clip this one.
Welcome to Comics League Indie Wednesday. I am Jared. I'm here with Hero Darky Dark. Welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Anytime, dude. So the way I normally do interviews with first-time guests is I normally ask them the simple question: what got you into comics? And so to just go into that.
Well, I grew up with a big family, so I had a lot of older brothers. So it's kind of one of those things of trickle-down society. So you watch what your brothers watch. So they're really big into stuff like the Justice League animated stuff. So of course, I watched it and just got really into it. Because I remember even recently when we were talking about it, my brother was saying when I was a kid, I used to imitate the openings.
Ah, nice. Well, in your defense, those were pretty kick-ass openings. So there you go. Hey, what's up, Dave? What's up, David? What's up, Deladia? Yeah, so that's actually that show is actually what really got me aware of the overall DC universe. I knew who Superman and Batman were, but I didn't know necessarily who Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, or Martian Manhunter were per se. And then obviously with Unlimited, that exploded with how many characters they put in there.
Yeah, no doubt. Because when you're a kid, depending on what school you went to, you're not that interested in reading. So even something like Big Picture won't appeal to you. But watching the show, that's a lot easier.
Yeah, and here's the thing. The interesting thing about comics is that they're basically TV shows that just never end, even sometimes when we really want them to end. But they have a very episodic format is my point, and that's why I think all these animated shows really caught on with people, is because it was basically like watching a comic book for 20 minutes a day.
Yeah, especially with how much work they put in, because they won't just 10 minutes in the lab, came out with an episode, put through the script. You can obviously tell that they put in, probably didn't eat that day just to make sure that script was perfect.
And it was. My one problem with Justice League is that they had this strange obsession with trying to get Batman and Wonder Woman together, and I'm like, I don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. The big push that they always had with trying to put a Batman with every female character in the DC universe. I'm like, he's not James Bond.
Wow, that's surprising. I mean, to me personally, I find it always entertaining. That I guess I'm just very basic like that. Seeing that broody guy just being mess around with a woman 100 times his strength. I don't know. To me, that just finds it funny, especially since Batman don't let himself get pushed around over it.
Well, here's the thing: I'm the dude that has a seething, passionate hate against Lois Lane. For some reason, I just don't like that character. I find her abrasive and annoying. That's just me. I just want to be clear before everyone burns me down in the comments. I'm just saying that's just me. But it's just the thing about it is that I always saw Wonder Woman more with Superman, because they did that comic in the new 52 era where they put those two together, and I always felt that worked better than Wonder Woman and Batman. Because one of my chief problems with Wonder Woman and Batman, it makes Wonder Woman look really shallow dating the rich guy.
I don't know, because she is a princess. It's not like she just asked them for money. She basically got all the riches she wants just by going back to Danastera. Just get a couple gold bars, come back, boom, you can base it by Amazon. So I don't think it's that shallow.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that the way Wonder Woman grew up, I at least the way I see it, she would want to go for something different than what she grew up with for thousands of years, if we're going by the fact that Wonder Woman's like thousands of years old. But so let's talk about your comics that you want to come on here and plug. So let's start with, what was the inception? What's the plot? Go into it.
Yeah, so of course, that's the book name is Relentlessly Bullied Hero. I see the comic from movie theater King Birdstorm 8000. Yeah, of course, also I did have like a heavy anime manga inspiration to it. Between all the animation shows I did watch a lot of anime like Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, Soul Eater, that kind of stuff. So of course, it really helped blend into my taste, what I find interesting. Plus, because I really like black and white comics as well. So of course, that's what helps put me into that style. And for the exception of the comic, this mostly I'm very sporadic as a person. One day I can spend a whole day working on all kinds of stuff. The next day, just getting out of bed is too much work. So of course, for me, when it comes to ideas and how I write stories, it's usually just me, hanging out, playing video games. And then one day I just think, it'll be really funny or really entertaining if there's a story about X or Y. And from there, I just keep on building and building until boom, I got a story. So for this one, it was just more me just thinking to myself, I want to start making my own comics, but let me go with something both fun that I can really be invested in, but not too, let's say, One Piece, where it's like, okay, to enable to do a story, I need like 500 chapters plus. So I decided to have a fun, story about, what if there was a hero who really wanted to try his best, kind of like a Batman, but without his money. He really want to try his best to help out a town. But of course, not being Batman, so you don't have the unlimited resources, and being quite new, he kind of sucks. So throughout the entire thing,
so it's like Spider-Man, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, Spider-Man. So yeah, he really sucked, and so really, he gets kind of knocked around a lot, and a lot of people down him and stuff. Because in this world, basically recently, their star hero have died. So of course, that helped drown a lot of people in apathy and nihilism, where it's kind of just like, okay, people stop taking certain issues well. People stop seeing issues with certain villains. Even in just the East #1 itself, the villain, his motivation is both interesting, but it's not that deep, because to him, what he does is just like, oh yeah, why not? Like, why can't I just do some of these things? I don't see that important. You're a hero, you're gonna try to stop me, and then I'm gonna go do my own thing. Why are you taking it so seriously? So it's kind of just the fun of the story, just seeing how his personality works. Because spoiler alert, the main character is an edgelord, and like everyone knows he's an edgelord. So it's not like, okay, yeah, we'll take him too seriously, but him himself takes it very seriously, and that's how just oppose his mega serious take on everything, in opposed to everyone else just being super chill about everything. And along the way, there's a villainous, girl who just finds him interesting and decided, what, I'm gonna see how this guy does. And she just follows him around, messes with him, and do all kind of stuff for him just because she's bored.
That sounds cool. I definitely dig that. And the thing that stood out to me first is that, well, I can relate to like not really feeling like writing some days. Like there are days when I go through massive writer's block where I'll just I'll sit down. I have a plan. I have everything outlined. I'm there, and I'm like, what do I put on it? What's up, Throth? I'm just like, what do I put in here? And then there are some days where I'm like flowing around like I'm writing the Declaration of Independence. I'm just like, okay, I got this. And I'm like, oh no. But the other thing that really stood out is that the fact that you're essentially starting with like a simple idea and then possibly expanding later, and that's what I think is a good approach when it comes to like creating IPs and creating indie comics. Because the thing is, if you start off with like this massive like thing, it gets really hard to like manage and wrap your mind against, where at least the way I do it, and I detect the way you do it, is that I'm writing a very simple story. If it's possible to expand this later in some way, fine. But for right now, I just want to tell a complete story.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because of course, especially when you're indie and you don't have too big of a fan base that you can rely on, you don't want to nail yourself down to one specific idea for so long, or else you might just be hindering yourself. So, for me, while I do have plans and things in case I can continue, overall, I kind of try to keep in a sense of, okay, I'm gonna see what I can do if, let's say, I only got 4 or 5 issues or chapters or whatever to do, and then have like a little story that can fit in there. And then if by like issue 1, 2, or 3 I start seeing that, okay, yeah, people are starting to get more into it, I can just start expanding, just putting more stuff. So it's kind of like a insurance Jenga block where it's like, okay, if it does well, yeah, I can just start stacking more. If it doesn't, okay, I think just put it in a likes box. May not be how I want it, but at least it's a completed product.
Yeah, because what people don't realize is that a lot of that's the same approach that like superhero movies used to have before we had like the MCU and all that stuff. It was like, okay, so we'll come out with a movie. If it does well, if it's successful, we'll expand. But for right now, we have to make sure this singular movie tells one complete story, because people will tell you, oh man, this story is really cool, I want more. And then you'll be like, sweet, I have this plan for more chapters or more films or more what have you.
Oh yeah, for sure. I completely agree. Because like these things cost money, of course, and we're not big studios, so it's not like we just have unlimited resources you just dump into our IP. So you gotta, be smart and know when to hold them.
Yeah, and the thing is, well, first off, it's really it's a plus to you that has a very anime and manga inspired style, because that's big right now, particularly in like in the American comic book market. So hats off to you. But the other thing is, like, again, too many people approach writing indie books as I have to have this big universe, this massive like Lord of the Rings style plan immediately. And it's like, no, you could tell like a simple story. Guy does A, B, C, and D, and I'm done. And then obviously have some ideas. So, like you said, obviously have some ideas on where you might want to go in the future. Here's some stuff I could tell in like an expanded book or like in the sequel. But be able to tell a complete story without like a sequel, without a sequel plan. And what I mean is that be able to tell a story that goes from A to B, the idea is be able to tell a complete story, and then you're good to go. Because that's ultimately what people want. Because if you tell a complete story and it's good, people will want more.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, they are sequels. If Hollywood tells anything that you can revive a series, bring it back for anything. So it's not like, okay, yeah, if you just make a complete ending, that's it, you're done. You can never pick it up. It's like, no, if you're smart, left something vague or leave some ideas, you can just easily pick up again and move on. So
yeah, because there's always prequels, there's always sequels, there's always, if you wanted to tell a what did this character do after the main story wrapped up, what did this character do, what had happened with this plot line. And it literally what a lot of writers don't realize is that they leave themselves plenty of room to expand, as long as they have those like, as long as they like realize it, in other words, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, trust me, I got you.
Yeah. So now let me ask you this. So what let's start this. What like anime or like comics really like inspired your series?
This specific one, I say it's a mix of, of course, shows like Spider-Man, the low town street level stuff, not being too serious, but being able to enjoy, as well as like the interpersonal drama. Because a big thing about this story and stuff is not, I mean, the fights, of course, are important as they help show how the main character, his name is Zio, how he deals with different kind of villains, how to reflect off of his ideology of how either they affect them, how he handles it, or what it says about the bigger picture of the world. So just having that kind of melodrama and stuff is what really helped inspire me. And then for like different kind of animes, I guess overall I can just say like a lot of the action battles, Sony one, like Yu Yu Hakusho Show, Star World, there's a lot of fun powers, seeing people fight and that kind of stuff.
Because I will say I have a very surface level like viewing of anime. Like the two anime that I've watched is, so I've watched most of Attack on Titan, loved it very much, and I've watched about, I'd say, 1 3/4 of a season of Avatar: The Last Airbender, if that counts. So, but I can tell you right now, the action scenes in anime are like, and I see this even in the promotional art for your thing. It is the thing that I love about anime art style is that it's very like high energy. Like when you see someone like charging up a punch, you actually feel like it's kind of like, it's a very visceral experience, because you sort of feel like you kind of feel like the force of the charge.
Yeah, the weight.
Yeah, exactly, the weight. And it's like when that hits, the thing about anime is like, even if it's a static image, somehow they figured out a way to make you feel the impact. It's like when Goku punches someone, you feel it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And of course, another big anime inspiration I want to say before is, of course, My Hero Academia, and seeing like the heroes' interpersonal relationship, how a hero affects society, and that kind of stuff. As a big part of it is, even the heroes are starting to be more hugely selfish. They'll start to lose their way. They're not looking at the main goal. And while everyone kind of makes fun of the main character for how overly serious it is, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, he's a bit of a squirrel, maybe a spaz, if you will, but at least he can see through his action that he does really care. He's not just an editor who just says whatever because he thinks his main character. Then is that no, he really does just care about doing this stuff.
Yeah, I dig that, because one of the parts of like superhero pop culture specifically that always really interests me is how the superhero relates to society in general. What does society look like if we have these pretty much gods amongst men, if you will? And that's why I like stories like Injustice, I like The Boys and stuff, because a lot of those stories deal very much with those types of concepts, because it's really interesting to consider how society changes when you have these beings among us.
Yeah, it is interesting because, like, what would that entail? Because as humans, think about how we as humans treat things like animals. Yeah, a chicken won't pose much of a threat to us, so that way we can easily just cultivate it, farm it, raise it up. So what do you think happens if suddenly a group of people or races now suddenly can fly or sue electricity, and how would that handle with interacting with people when it's their job to watch over us? Would they still be as committed, or would they just start seeing us as, oh yeah, those people are doing this again? Or yeah, why am I want to spend all day making sure that grandma don't cross the street while looking both ways, where I can just fly around the sky or make money being an Instagram influencer and that kind of stuff.
Can you imagine a superhero Instagram influencer? That just sounds like, well, first off, that would exist, and nowadays I'm surprised not a lot of shows have dealt with that, because that would be hilarious. It's like you're taking a selfie on the moon. You can't. It's the superhero on the moon challenge. you can't tell me no one would try that.
Oh, geez. The worst part is, that eventually there's gonna be that one hero who's gonna accidentally start World War III over like a prank. Crossing the Korean border.
The nukes are flying, and he's like, "It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank." Yeah, I'm seriously surprised there's not like a superhero anthology series, like an animated series. That's just all these comedy moments of like prank challenges, World War III starting because someone or it's not even a prank. It's just he got lost flying and he ends up in North Korea.
Oh boy.
He's
and
like,
then he
where
crosses the
am I?
border.
This is not good. Why am I being shot at? Oh no.
Oh,
But, yeah,
well,
but
I mean, there we go, and stuff like that is like
Mhm.
those little pockets of ideas that will help roll into eventually his own stories and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and plus what that helps, it actually helps a lot in the world building because you get to because when you look at how the society deals with superheroes, well, for one thing, that opens up a whole avenue of stories that can be told when it comes to like sequels and like down the line stories. You can talk about what happens if society turns against the superheroes and tries to arrest them, like they're kind of doing with Wonder Woman right about now, or what happens like if you have like a civil war among the superheroes. What happens to society when they're caught in the middle of a massive battle between all the gods? That doesn't turn out that well.
Yeah. Well, other like even more subtle stuff, like what happens if superheroes starts having stuff like organizations who are interested, had less to do with, of course, what we consider heroism, and then more go for, try to secure a deal with government and stuff, and how that can affect them as, a lot of stuff can go haywire. As now, would they just be able to save everyone? Or will certain things start going on the radar because, oh yeah, this superhero organization don't want to ruffle any feathers with this type of business or whatever.
Or it could be, it's like, and this was the argument during the Civil War movie and a little bit in the comics, is like, okay, if we all of a sudden become an arm of the U.S. government, what happens if we start becoming a tool of their foreign policy and we end up going to Iraq or something like that to go take out a dictator when we're needed to like stop an alien invasion?
Exactly. And so,
again, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know, they're saying, so yeah, stuff like that is what helps, inspire what I'm writing, as just a lot of interesting of seeing how it's less of a, if anything I say, it's less of a deconstructive hero, more of a reconstructive hero, seeing people start racing up to that standard of being a true hero, despite how the world works and all the inter stuff and action that goes on.
Well, yeah, and plus, when you think about it, that shows the true, like, I guess, brand or the true measure of a hero. Because if you can go through all of this, like, ridicule, public attention, and such, but still continue to do the right thing, you are a hero.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's something I feel like is kind of missing with a lot of like mainstream stuff. It was like, yeah, of course they have their little big stories and stuff, but sometimes how I get to say catty some superheroes can get, you kind of just feel like, are they taking their job seriously? Like they do remember that for them, their job is to make sure the difference between someone's going to work that day or being eaten by Killer Croc. I feel like they need to not mess around so much as if lives aren't on their hands.
That's my problem with, and what's up, Nick? That's my problem with the Marvel movies, is because, and why I've always been like more of a DC fan as opposed to Marvel fans, because with Marvel, they would have like the biggest like threat. Like, let's say Galactus is invading, and they're making jokes like it's just a regular Tuesday. It probably is, but the point is, it's like you're in the middle of a life or death situation, and you're making. I can understand one or two jokes, but like in a Marvel movie, they turn it into a straight up comedy, and I'm like, guys, come on. There's a point where it gets a little too much, and I 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah, because like I remember, now I may not remember this perfectly, but a good moment was in like Captain America 1. Steve was depressed about something, and he was trying to drink his problems away, but because of the superhero syndrome, he couldn't get drunk. That was both a nice joke, but it didn't like completely take away from the moment that it downplayed what was happening.
Yeah, and if I remember, and that is correct. What happened is that his friend Bucky had just died. I say air quotes because Winter Soldier, but the point is he had just died. So it's more like, yeah, and I like that because they're using the rules around the superheroes to like, yeah, he can't get drunk. So Movie Theater asks, what like stories inspired you to do your stuff?
So like I said, MHA, My Hero Academia was like a big inspiration. Seeing how it was a superhero genre film that didn't just deconstruct heroes, but actually reconstruct, went deep into how heroes can affect societies in many different ways. And so, stories like those what really helped inspire me. 'Cause I'm just like, what if I have not something similar, but kind of dance around in the same ballpark, but from a different point of view, as will My Hero Academy. It's a really young, idealistic kid, going to basically becoming the next Superman. In this story, it's like, well, first of all, Superman's dead. So now everyone's it's kind of like when the parents leave a house alone, everything starts going down in quality. And so now the person who's trying to save it all isn't like a Batman or Robin or Nightwing who's like a golden example of how to start doing things better. But instead, that one kid will just go like, sometimes I want to just go away. But his willpower, determination to actually do good. Of course, playing off the comedy of how overly serious he is him trying to do his best. And then, find more about him, where he comes from, why he does it, all the real things happening around him. Because in the first chapter, while there's not much detail in it, when you start putting little things together, you start seeing some things where you're just like, that boy isn't white, but I'm not so white. And that's a little bit of a mystery aspect to help get readers more invested in the story as they try to figure out, okay, what happened to get up to this point.
I like that because I like it when writers put a little bit of teasers throughout their work, because what that does is it makes the reader want to reread the book, like at the end of like a trade, or like it's at the end of the story. Let's say you look back and you're like, okay, so that's where that was teased. That's where that was teased. And now I get it. And then the whole thing comes together. That's like kind of like what the MCU used to be like before they went like so crazy, pre-Endgame, where it was like, because if you watch the MCU from Iron Man 1 to Endgame, it's like, it's essentially that meme of like the wall with the map and all the red yarn. It's like, oh, that's how that connects to this, and that connects to that. And I'm like, oh, that actually works really cool. Now it's just like it's like so much stuff coming at you. It's kind of it's essentially homework at this point. But there's a way to do it if you tease it throughout the main story that it doesn't feel like homework to the reader, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that's really important that newer writers or any writer need to know that there needs to be if you plan to make a launch a story or a story that's more than like one book, there need to be like at least something to get readers interested to read the next issue. Because the first draft of this story, it wasn't bad, but it was very, I guess you could say, average to right, to like straight to the point. So of course, I sent it out to our friends, and he said, it's good, but it's a little bit plain. So after I went back, I'm like, okay, think back to it, since I don't have the liberties of just having an audience that will come back to get it anyways, I need to spice it up. So I took some of those story ideas that I was planning to do next issue or the issue after that. I'm just like, okay, how can I naturally sprinkle them in, or like make points of it about that to get people interested that still fits within the story, but also help get people more interested. So they go like, oh yeah, I want to see what issue 2 about, so I know what that was about. Yeah.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, and this goes back to what we said before, it's like you can tease and communicate to the reader, because what that communicates to the reader is like, hey, if you want more of this, I have a plan. In other words, if you don't, if the teasers aren't there, or like they're not there enough, and you tell and then you just like announce a sequel, what that communicates to the readers that there is no plan. But if you have all these teasers in there, and then you go, hey, guess what? I also have a plan for all the stuff that's going to answer all these questions. Then the reader, and it communicates to the reader that, hey, I'm in for a well-structured story that actually like it tells a larger story with a set of smaller stories, in other words.
Yeah, and a good way to get that is also, like, of course, making people kill out the characters, and that's why I decided to go with the Ezra personality, so that it seems more funny because he was just like I don't want to say generic, but like simply, oh yeah, I'm just a good person trying to be good. But that isn't bad. I feel like we need more of that.
It's overdone kind of a little bit.
Yeah, something was like, okay, you could kind of see where things would go for the most part. They're not gonna be good. Like maybe one or two bad things might happen to them that'll make them sad, and that kind of it's kind of like what Black Adam tried to do, where they try to make it look like, oh yeah, we're gonna do something unexpected. He's gonna be a villain, and at the end of the day, he was basically just a good guy. But once in a while, he'll kill and mass murder. And I'm just like, okay, that's not really. You're not really taking the cop up from the table. That's basically like what most people will get past it to a hero for. So I decided to go for the Ezra personality because, like, okay, he's not. Oh yeah, he's so serious. I'm the coolest thing ever. But just seeing his real tendencies, it's like you're both instant to see. Okay, what is wrong with you? But also, okay, what formed you here? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that also adds on to what we talked about before, is that since we don't have a guaranteed audience, it's not like we're writing Superman, but since we're writing like a relatively unknown IP as at this time, we do have to do stuff that like differentiates our IPs from like from like the mainstream stuff. So people are like, hey, if you like this, you'll also like this. So I think since like a lot of the superheroes don't necessarily go edgelord, going edgelord is actually a really good idea for people that want that like storyline, or at least want something different than the traditional, oh come on old chum type stories.
Yeah, and also a good way to help get people interested in project, like many outside things to help give them a taste of characters and stuff like that, like tone. Because like I know I'm currently working on one, and it's basically about the main character. He has like these iron boots, decently iron boots, but basically mechanical boots he wears. And I'm kind of working on like a comic for it. Like a 1-page, 2-page thing about why he wears them. And of course, someone just like, oh yeah, why are you wearing them? And then he has a flashback to when he was chasing like a bank robber on a rooftop. And of course, common hero villain speak, oh yeah, you never catch me alive. And so the bank robber will jump off the building to one on the streets, and the hero follows them. But the next day, you see that, not next day, the next panel, we see that the bank robber broke his leg since he jumped off the building. And the hero, I won't say he broke his leg, but you can very obviously tell he was barely injured for it.
At that moment, he's like, maybe I didn't think this through.
Exactly. Like he's trying to act
I love that.
His legs wobbling. And then, of course, we go back to, after that active question, he was just like, he tried to stop top going like, oh, yeah, these are just to help me do my job. But, he just didn't want to break his legs again.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. But yeah, 100% that's a great idea to have a smaller little stories to like expand upon why this is this way, to basically explain to the audience, here are the rules of this universe. But make them small enough so it doesn't feel like homework. It's like, in other words, don't make them like 88-page things like the mainstream comic industry will do. They will do this where they'll have like a massive dictionary length comic to explain like a tiny detail. And I'm like, you could explain this, like you said, in 2 pages. You don't need all of this.
Yeah, and making it like short and sweet also makes it easier with advertising, because like with 1 page, that's like what, $8-10 at most. That'll be a lot easier doing stuff like hiring voice actors, making that into like a YouTube Shorts. So now I can post on things like YouTube Shorts, Rumble, Instagram, and now instead of having to make people buy a book to have any sort of interest, now for all I know, someone can just retweet it or repost it, and then now all of a sudden that one small thing got 20 different people at least looking at the project to go, oh yeah, I wonder where that came from.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like social media cannot be ignored in these days, first off, but the idea of like involving multimedia in promoting this, because like you said, again, this goes back to how it's harder to start like a new IP, but when you use social media, that there's a chance it could go viral, or like a lot of people could see it, and then all of a sudden, if you have like a link to the page or to the main book, they're like, oh, okay, I like this. Oh my gosh, it's based on this comic book. I like this. I'll buy this.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that some people don't take advantage of enough. Because I get making a book itself is always expensive, but this is a lot less expensive way to help market it. Because like I said, a page that's depending on the artist you get, maybe like 100, maybe less, and then that can be shelved forever. And you don't have to pay for it again. Especially if you have like a very easily memeable panel or something in there, anti is relevant, just toss it in there. All of a sudden, someone see it, be like, "Oh yeah, that's funny," and then boom. And then eventually, people start asking where this came from.
When you think about it, that's why memes are created. So there you go. Hey, what's up, JD? Yeah, so that's actually a fantastic idea, because again, with how meme heavy our culture is, if you link it to something, and the way that we spread memes, all of a sudden people that aren't comic book readers could move into your sphere and go like, oh, I like this, I'm interested in this. Oh, that's where that meme came from. That's interesting. I should check out that book. And again, I agree with you. Too many creators ignore social media or don't use it to its fullest extent, because that's what basically runs our world nowadays.
Yeah, and to be fair, I get it. I'm someone who some people might say hates other people. I don't get the most joy talking to other people all the time. I just like to sit back, game a little, write a little, grill, and talk to people I just feel like, which is like a couple of friends. Talking to hundreds or dozens of people all the time. It's like, especially when you're someone who don't too much care for what other people does for their lives. But that's why it's smart to do it in ways where they're looking for you, like making memeable. You don't have to make it in the actual book, but like outside of it, things that people can sell. Now, okay, you don't have to literally talk to everyone. You just need to like post it a couple of times, and they'll share it, and then they're doing the work for you.
Yeah, they essentially become your marketing team without knowing it. And the thing is, exactly, you could like hire someone to draw you even as simple as a single panel. Then you put some funny text, send it out. That gets spread like up the yin yang. And then guess what? You have that's the way you can grow your brand and your audience. I mean, I see a lot of people that actually do this really well, like Nick from the Phoenix Press, where you post memes related to your project, and then all of a sudden, here's the thing, that puts your thing in the public consciousness. People start to think about it. It gets stuck in their heads, which is actually a good thing in this case. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, I'll go back this book.
Yeah. And, that's how most people do it. Because, like, there's so much different media and books out there. So it's not like you have all the time in the world to just look through everyone. So, of course, you kind of sometimes need that little push to get into it. Like, for one, a comic book that I'm currently reading is Rogue Sun. I kind of only got into it because it was once mentioned to be relating to Radiant Black, which to me personally, I put Rogue Sun as a grade comic series, while Radiant Black is more like a C at the best, kind of B. But you see it once, all right, let's see what this is all about. Pick up SC1, I loved it. Now that's like one of the few books I'll go to the comic store on Wednesday on time just to make sure I get.
Exactly, that's fantastic. And yeah, 100%. You use social media, you use all these tools, and then you will get people interested. Then once they become a regular customer, you're set. You're good. All you got. Once you have that regular customer, or in my case, a regular view on like YouTube or anything like that, then you're set. Because once you have that, you have a steady stream of people supporting your work. Then you can focus on expanding to other mediums, doing other books, like you said, because it becomes more popular, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, there's interest in this IP. I can go ahead and proceed with the ideas that I laid out in issue 1.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Now let me ask you this. So you mentioned you're a big gamer. So what type of games do you play?
They, I don't say I have a specific genre, but of course I'm very action orientated, so I enjoy stuff like Ghost of Tsushima. That's like one of the few games I actually platinum.
Oh wow!
Yeah. I play Smite a lot, which is like a free MMO. It's about basically like Pantheon and LG's fight. It's like League of Legends, but with Pantheons.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I've seen a lot of advertisement for that on YouTube. Yeah, me, I'm more on the action side, but a lot of what I play are like Halo, Call of Duty, Ghost Recon, and recently a lot of DC Online, which is the DC like massive multiplayer.
Oh yeah,
game.
no, I used to play that all the time a couple of years ago.
It's we get into a lot of shenanigans. Like last night I was playing with Nick, and when we straight up role play in the game. Like I'm like he goes, Jared, why are you flying above me? And I'm like, oh, I'm just watching you achieve the objective with popcorn as I'm just hanging out because you suck at this game. It's so crazy, but. Yeah, and I play a lot of those games where you can like customize your character and like really assume the identity, because I feel like that's plus also I do a lot of my character. What's kind of funny, a lot of the times when I play MMOs, I just create the character because I legit created one of the characters from my series I'm working on right now in there. Like for some reason, DC had all the parts and everything available, so I'm like, here you go.
Well, trust me, I feel you, because like, see, I have a group of friends I play D&D with, and so recently I've been, based doing that where like I'll make characters not one-to-one based, but like centered around that, and it's been really helpful with helping expand ideas, and then don't have to put more. Even this book, there's some stuff that happened in the D&D thing where I'm just like, you know what, that would be really smart thing to help put into here, especially like issue 1 to help differentiate the character to stand out a little bit more.
Yeah, honestly, here's the interesting thing. A lot of comic creators, I think, should do like at least at one point an RPG, whether or not that's online or tabletop, because that gives you a boot camp in character creation. And the good thing about like online games like DC Online or stuff is that if you're making a character, you get to visualize how it looks. You could see like, how does the armor look? What colors look well together, which ones don't. So that way you essentially do a lot of the character design work before you even like hire an artist, because you can essentially send the dude a screenshot and go, okay, something like this.
Yeah, that can save you a lot of money depending on the artist. Because like, of course, because me, sometimes if I had to do an idea from scratch, I try to go, okay, let me find like a very cheap artist to at least get the details down, have a rough sketch, and get a much more detailed artist to help get the final picture, so that I don't need to go through the whole thing of him explaining, because some people won't create and character completely by scratch. So having that is really helpful. But get on DC Online, what was your favorite superpower to have?
Oh, geez. I have a lot. Well, for one thing, I have... my character throws fireballs and he has Superman's heat vision, but what I gave my character is the ability to call down the lightning like Shazam. So I'll just go in the middle of a horde of enemies. They'll swarm me. Then I'll just go Shazam, and the lightning comes down, like blast them away. So I basically put like all the stacked powers on my guy. Like I have Black Canary Scream. I have a Green Lantern ring. So I am basically like every superhero rolled into one. I am the amalgam of the DC universe right here.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember my favorite set was like parkour, but like gadgets, because kind of like that Batman as, okay, yeah, I'm not one of you guys, but even as a human, I'm gonna take you all down. And one of my favorite things to do is just like stick a bomb, knocking them away, and then basically stun locking them and all that stuff.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of funny. My layer, by the way. So what I did, I logged on to DC Online one day, and then it told me I had like a bunch of like things for my little HQ. So I'm like, okay, so let me go check this out. I had like all the promotional posters for Justice League. So my thing is like loaded with comic art from Justice League. I'm like, okay, this is dope. But the funny part is I'll even put powers that make no sense with my superhero. Like I gave him the ability to like venom out like Bane, even though that makes no sense for a character that's basically Superman. But I'm like, no, I want to be Superman, but I want to be Superman, but slightly stronger. That's how I want to be with Superman.
It's like that meme of that guy in a pool pouring a water bottle over himself.
That's exactly. Yeah. How powerful do you want to be? Yes. I'm like, okay, this is scary, but it's like, but but again, the good thing about that game too is particularly with me because one of my characters is basically Superman. I got to see how the powers worked with the design and how it looked, so I can better visualize it from a script perspective to my artist. So I can say it looks basically like this. He's making this motion. This is basically in what way he's punching. So really, it cannot be overestimated how like helpful gaming and RPGs have been to a comic writer.
Yeah, because I feel like some people even don't focus too much on fight choreography because with a lot of comic stuff, like Rogue Sign is really decent at it, but with a lot of comic stuff, it's kind of just like, okay, they don't think too much about how this fight will flow. They just do, oh yeah, action pose, new action pose. He fires something, someone gets hit, but it doesn't really flow too much where you feel like, okay, they really pan out every step. You just like, no, this, I don't know, draw something. We'll do it later. And so, having that kind of stuff can make things good. Because even, recently with another project I was working with, basically, I was rewatching this anime called Air Girl and seeing some of the tricks they did there. I'm just like, oh, yeah, I can have some of my kills do stuff like that, and it helps open up a whole new path of ideas.
Plus, a lot of stuff that I do before I write, no matter what, I just read a bunch of comics for like an hour or two because what that shows me, because I get an idea of panel layout, I get an idea. Okay, so that's how they visualize that. Particularly the comics that have like the example scripts in the back that can go. Okay, so that's how they describe that. That's how they describe that. But yeah, 100% your point. A lot of I mean, it depends on which artist you have because a lot of artists, it's because the guy that is drawing my book, he and I've seen like all the same movies, so I can go, okay, so it's this. It's kind of like this fight scene from Man of Steel. It's kind of like this from Batman. So he at least understands what I'm going for. But yeah, 100%, it helps to have an understanding of like fight choreography or like fight choreography of the genre that you're writing in, because it makes it so much easier to express that to the artist, and it's such a time saver.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like both the readers and the writer. Because like for the writers, kind of like, okay, yeah, you know how to describe it, but for the readers, it makes it easier following what's happening. Because sometimes, I'm not sure if it's just me, but sometimes I could be a little bit dumb and it's harder to follow what's happening. And of course, that means I'd stay on the panel longer. I'm just like, okay, so what's happening? Where are we at? Who's winning? And that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and it's also the part that also a lot of writers need to work on is deciding like how many panels you want to use, because and deciding how much dialogue to panel there will be, because I've seen so many great books like Superman for like many years. They had a very verbose writer on it, so you would have like the most kick-ass Superman panels, like action scenes and everything, but it's all covered by speech bubbles. So I'm like, what's the point of having a great writer if I can't see the art? Just put a dollar store artist on this if you're going to cover it up. What difference does it make?
Yeah, and the worst part is that it's not like every piece of dialogue is that portrait. A lot of times it can just be like some really repetitive or like just over exaggerated. Like, oh yeah, like 3 sentences or 4 sentences talk about justice. I'm just like, okay, bro, we get it. Like, you only need like 2 of them, and we got the point.
Yeah, exactly. And like, we get it. You stand for justice. We get it. That's you're a superhero. We get that concept. Say something else cool, and there you go. But it's like, and I feel like a lot of writers tend to get a little too stereotypical where the dialogue is like a lot of these superheroes sound like the traditional idea of superheroes, which I get. That's the thing of the genre. But to a certain degree, it becomes a turnoff when you're like you said, I stand for justice and this other synonym related to justice. And I'm like, we get it. You're a superhero.
Yeah, funny enough, that is that kind of thing. Like, like I said, for my book, the main character, that Landlord, takes everything super serious. That is sort of how he talks. He's talking a very verbose, long dialogue. And it's funny because it gets to a point where like the villain just like, okay, yeah, I get you're playing a part and all that stuff. And the guy just like,
I love that.
What are you talking about? I'm not playing.
I love that. So it's kind of like the characters are in on the joke. That actually works really well. I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I think that's a good place to leave it off. Dark, it was a pleasure having you on. So where can one find you and where can one back your book?
You can find me on stuff. I have a YouTube. I'm trying to get back into actually doing stuff with it, but I'm decently lazy with it. But it's there. I also have a Twitter at Hero Darky Dark. And I'm probably gonna try to make like an Instagram eventually. But yeah, for the most part, just YouTube, Twitter, I guess Rumble too, but I probably should actually clean that up. And if you want to follow Relentlessly Bullied Hero, it's coming out. I'm gonna start the campaign in December 2024, and it's on Kickstarter. I'm also working on getting it on My Comics too, since that new website's out. So yeah, watch out for it.
And here you go, everyone. Be sure to back and follow that book. So, on that note, everyone, again, Hero, thanks for coming on the show. You are always welcome. Let's do this again real soon. If you need any help, if you need any help organizing the YouTube page, let me know. I'll be glad to help you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Anytime. So on that note, everyone, stay heroic. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.